Welcome back to another episode of Turning the Table, sponsored by Benchmark 60. Turning the Table is the most progressive weekly videocast for today's food and beverage industry, featuring staff-centric operating solutions for restaurants in the hashtag New Hospitality Culture. My name is Adam Lamb, and I am a career coach for chefs and hospitality professionals. I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60, but alas, he is somewhere out in California, out on a golf course, believe it or not. But how many times in your life do you actually get to play Pebble Beach, right? This is episode 112, Seasonal Challenges for Restaurant Operators. In a moment, we'll talk about how you can be better prepared for those seasonal slumps that seem to catch us all off guard every year, even though we know where they're coming. We can often have a smug sense of satisfaction that we've got this quarter clocked, counting on holiday hell week to get our numbers where they need to be. Still, just as we start to pat ourselves on the back for being titans of industry that deep down we all hope we are, a cold front comes down from Canada a month and a half early, and all of a sudden, our October P&L looks just like our January, and we start panicking. But more of that after our shameless plug. This little lunchbox live stream is broadcast every week on Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time on the Turning the Table podcast page on LinkedIn, YouTube, and the Chef Life Coach Facebook page. You can catch the podcast version everywhere you get your podcasts in 2 days. We ask that you share the show with someone you care about who can find this information useful and leave a review, because it always helps. Now, even though we don't have Jim, we do happen to have a surprise guest, which kind of just waiting for her to show up in the green room, our luxurious green room with, the stuffed bear and the hot tub. But until then, I want to get kind of cracking into some of these questions. So first thing is, what causes seasonal spikes in labor costs? I am in Asheville, North Carolina right now, and for the last 4 days, it has been unseasonably cold. Got our asses cracked really good. And shamefully, I must admit, it was about 9 o'clock at night, and I was out in the backyard trying to empty my one-person hot tub because the pump had gone earlier in the year, and I'd forgotten about it, but I knew that if I left it there, it was going to get down to 24, and those PVC pipes don't do very well in the cold. So needless to say, I think it caught us all off guard, and what a great topic to have and a little goose in the ass to get us going. Now, here in Asheville, we actually have 4 seasons in our calendar year, especially for restaurants and hotels, which they feast off the 4th season, which is, a couple weeks ago when all the leaves started turning. It was absolutely gorgeous. As a matter of fact, even last week, it was, 60, 65, 72, and just gorgeous outside. So it was a great excuse to be outside. Lots of people on motorcycles. Blue Ridge Parkway is usually jammed up pretty well. People kind of gawking at all the leaves. Now, I'd spent 25 years previously in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and we got to be so good at charting the year that you could almost set a calendar by it. So we knew that there'd be a small slump for the first 2 weeks of September, last week of August, first week of September, when everybody went back to school, and everybody's kind of getting back into their own lives. But surely, towards the end of September, October, people starting coming out, doing a little bit of traveling, and the numbers start picking back up again. And that kind of cruises just like that, little bit of a peak, little bit of a rise right towards Christmas. And then, as I said, holiday hell week, when you just got to hold on for dear life between Christmas and New Year's. Now, that's a really crazy way to build a P&L, especially when most of us are on calendar years. And so that's the end of our year as well. So anything like a cold snap, unseasonable weather, torrential rains, hurricanes, it really, really throws a wrench in our financial liberties. And I remember quite well having kind of this knee-jerk reaction and pulling way, 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 way back. Because again, we're all managing under labor costs. The great thing about Benchmark 60 and its revolutionary productivity metric is that it can show you within 1 or 0.2% what's the sweet spot. Because when you cut back too far, now all of a sudden you're losing these opportunities to really capture money left on the table. Meaning that if you're sufficiently staffed on the floor, then that guest is going to get a second cocktail. He's going to be toured through the menu appropriately, and be able to kind of reap the benefit of having a nice leisurely dinner. And when you're understaffed, not only are people getting stacked up at the back, or at the front, I should say, but by the time they get to the table, then it's a rush job. And what's actually happening there is you're losing all opportunities to expand the guest check or the customer spend. Nobody will ever, ever, ever be able to save themselves to success. If you're not managing the top line, doesn't matter what you do with the bottom line. And I should know, because I had some of the craziest operation managers, one of which Ronnie Ager from Chicago, one of the most dynamic guys I ever worked with. But as the service staff used to come through the kitchen door, because the air was unbalanced, because we had all the hoods going, it would blow all the cocktail napkins off their trays onto the floor, and he would run around trying to pick them up because he's like, it's 7 cents. It's 7 cents. Now, that's kind of an old school way to look at it, but it really is kind of the focus of what are we doing with the small things. Unfortunately, it's never, ever as big as one solution. So Benchmark 60 is pretty unique in that they can be able to lay it out so clearly that most operators that we show this solution to come up with all kinds of crazy ideas on how to be able to optimize this opportunity. And it's not like they're putting that money back in their pocket. Our experience has been is that a lot of these operators who lived through the pandemic and the shutdown, just like all of us, probably wondering, like, how can I do something nice for my staff? How can I keep them engaged? And maybe they were wondering about how they were going to afford healthcare or mental health care. And now all of a sudden, it seems very, very clear to them that this is an opportunity. And so when that metric goes a little bit higher, when the productivity is higher, it's, you don't have to be in the facility to know that everybody worked really, really, really hard. And, for good or ill, there's only so much that folks are going to be able to take of that. The ones that came back to industry after the pandemic found an environment where people were rushing into the restaurants because they wanted to be connected emotionally with one another, which is great. But there were also the operators who wanted to kind of optimize that opportunity and would open up the restaurant full, even though they didn't have the staff to manage it. Because again, it's this kind of short-sighted thoughts around budgeting for these particular times. So it really behooves us to be able to kind of step back and use a very, very clear eye, not only to try to gauge what our opportunity is for revenue maximization, but also how much can our staff really take, right? And I know there's more questions about this, but I wanted to bring on a very dear friend, someone who I've been connected with for a long time, and whom I support 100%, and that would be Chef Maria Campbell.
Hey, this is like live action. I'm here live at actually one of our cookbook contributors' spaces. So it's a Porco Small Oven in Philadelphia.
Yeah. How cold is it in Philadelphia right now? I love the scarf,
I got
by the way.
Scarf going on. I'm feeling the cold. I got my flannel working. Yeah, it's a little chilly, but we're feeling the fall for sure.
You and I had gotten connected again just a week or so ago, and you had something very special that you wanted to talk about. I don't want to lose the thread of our conversation because I think you have a lot to add, because not only are you a very talented educator, community builder, but you're also a heck of a consultant. So I know that you're. So I'm gonna want to know before we end, what you would do. Like, what would be your prescription that maybe some operators who are watching this, maybe gain a couple insights that they can walk right back into their operation. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that you're doing amazing stuff to really get it in the points that people are not really catching, right? They're kind of missing some of these marks to retain their staff, keep their folks. And we both care deeply about the restaurant industry.
Yep.
The workers themselves on project work that I'm doing is going, how can I, as a couple of people, myself, my husband, who's a chef by trade, say, how can we help these individuals when we know there's staffing shortages, as you're mentioning, people are leaving in droves, but there are people that deeply care about this and stay. And for us as Cooks Who Care, founder here,
Yep.
working on providing benefits to individuals. And I'm going to tell you what, I've been trying to tackle this healthcare situation since 6 years ago.
I know you have.
It's too big of a beast to go directly to the healthcare companies. I've tried, and I haven't been able to succeed. What I have been able to do is to figure out the infrastructure to set up a community fund. And how that works is through the sale of our community cookbook, which the owner of this establishment, Chad Durkin, participated with a recipe in. 100% of the proceeds can actually pay forward mental health service access to people who are in industry. So, hey, I'm a worker. I need assistance with addiction recovery.
Right.
Oh, I want to see a counselor more than one time a month because I can't afford to. Or, I need access to a prescription medication that I need and go, you know what? I don't know if I should eat well this month. I have to pay that first, right? And they can go, hey, let us help you with that. And the cool thing is, my friend, Chef Adam Lamb, I just found out something that blew my mind, because once we get this cookbook off the ground, we're starting in Philly right now, Southern New Jersey area.
Right.
I can scale to different cities all across the United States where anybody who can raise a certain amount can have an independent fund for their location.
That's
under
fantastic.
Cooks Who Care.
So
I'm excited.
I can tell it's coming off you, and rightfully so. But I think it would really serve our listeners to perhaps gain some context.
Yeah.
You and I bumped into one another in an ACF conference.
Yes.
I was getting ready to go in and do my presentation, and your door was open just a little bit, and I was catching your conversation a little bit, so much so that I forgot I was late getting into my room. And then made a point to come in and say hello. And that's kind of the way it started. And so why don't you kind of give our listeners and our viewers a kind of a snapshot of how you transitioned in the industry to actually focus on community building?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I think as a chef, we're all activists in our own ways because we're constantly giving to charities. We're constantly the epicenters of community. As far as even during the pandemic, where did the guests want to go? They wanted to go to their favorite restaurants. So this was something I think, after meeting you, we had a harmony at heart, and we didn't want to leave because we were, at that time, I was talking about millennials, and I was talking about bridging young people into the conversation and the fold. We often underestimate our teens, especially in their youth. There used to be a time where apprenticeship was a thing, and we actually brought people in droves because we spent time to train them. We don't have time for that anymore. I mean, I barely see an internship that's actually doing some good work to train somebody. And so I've been working even with clients to kind of set the stage of like, how are we going to intentionally bring up people? How are we going to intentionally share what is going to help them grow? And because we've imparted knowledge from ourselves, right? So as an educator, I feel like I am constantly teaching. I'm constantly sharing that information I've learned over the years. It's not mine to keep. And so I believe it is our responsibility to pay forward that knowledge. And instead of just being in your everyday to day, looking at your bottom line, I say that is important. But if we are going to keep our people, what's not on the bottom line? How people feel, if they're happy to be with us, how long that they've stayed, how we're interviewing people, how are we looking at resumes even, it's like there's going to be gaps all over the place. And what kind of biases do we have, that are preventing us from actually not just retaining our people, but attracting the right folks and bringing them
Sure.
up?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest failings that I've experienced is that, the one critical act that every restaurateur can do a better job at is onboarding their employees. And I had the luxury of working at a upscale retirement community here in Asheville for 2 years. I got to bring my entire bag of ideas, like, okay, I've been working on this for years. Now I'm going to be able to, like, it was my laboratory. And the one thing that we did that was by far the most impactful is we created a half day. We called it day 2 orientation, because HR would do their orientation, which is like sign all these. And then the second day they came down and we spent a half a day in a room going over, like, doing silly stuff like showing the fish video, going over the missions, the whys, like really trying to connect them to the values of what we stand for, in hopes that they were actually aligned to that. And everybody who went through that process had a tenure that outlived me. Let's put it that way. They were still there when I left. So I know that that's like one of the top 2 reasons why a lot of people leave their present employment is just communication or lack thereof. And so if there's no framework for which that to occur, and I'm a big systems guy, so I figure that, if we have some guardrails in place and some boundaries, then it can be a good thing. But what caused you to start Cooks Who Care, and give us an idea of what Cooks for Care stands for?
Yeah, I mean, I started it because after being 15 years in the industry and seeing all of the dirty laundry, so to speak, and and just treatment of others. I think that being too busy for our personal lives has caused some harm to our mental health. And if we were waiting on the journey to reach our goals and then look back in our lives and say, what did I do along the way? We might have gotten distracted, right? I've met a lot of people in the industry that spent 15 plus years dedicated to the industry, and then they were trying to dedicate time to their family.
Right.
It's like, well, couldn't we have done something about being intentional and finding balance if we all accepted that that part of our lives is just as important as the goals we're trying to reach, right?
Right.
I felt bad for that, to be honest, that many people would stand up and say that if I were to be successful, that picture looks like this. And it means I've worked 90 hours a week. I've abandoned my family. I've reached success goals, that people should be proud of the bottom lines and the percentages that I've been able to maintain. But at the end of the day, my life is crap. My family doesn't talk to me, and I have 0 relationships with friends and family.
Oh boy.
And I think that seeing that over and over, that pattern, and drug addiction, people losing lives, I mean, I find that there are no more individuals that are more passionate about what they do than the food industry.
Right.
They do it for the reasons they express, those moments they create. They will sacrifice their entire lives for it. I have complete respect for that. But at the same time, I thought, isn't there something culturally wrong with that? Like, can I have respect for somebody that's a mom and hustling on her own, or a dad that has kids and is taking care of them and doing what they do, or is in a relationship with a partner and maintaining that and is successful in their career? Like, I think we've been missing the picture of the circle of wellness and how we take care of ourselves for a sustainable future. That's what made me want to start Cooks Who Care.
And that whole idea about sustainability is so powerful, because anybody who's has any grounding in economics has got to understand that with limited resources, there can only be so much expansion. There can only be so much unhindered growth. And I think one of the great things that COVID did was, and the pandemic shutdown was, it thinned the herd. So folks who were out there, kind of on a wing and a prayer, trying to string something together for the pure profit motive, they got stripped out. And so it's okay. There doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds of restaurants or several restaurants doing the same thing. My coaching is, at this point now, we all need to niche down. and get so specific. So you started Cooks Who Care, which I thought was a really interesting way to do it, because it's not like you came out and said, we're going to aggregate, we're going to just deal with mental health and wellness, like a lot of other organizations out there, and doing great work. But you focused it around community building, like bringing everybody together. I was fortunate enough to be able to come up to Philly for an event. Couldn't believe how many, restaurant folks were in one building. And it's such an amazing thing, because it's so easy to get siloed in your operation.
Yes.
I mean, I know I did. And when you were talking about, the things that we sometimes, that all of us make a bargain for, I am guilty as charged. There was a large portion of my time when I was not around, because I thought that I needed to reach a certain level financially so I could take care of my children, even though that meant I couldn't be around them, which was the stupidest. Like, my daughters didn't give a shit about the new shiny toy. The thing that they wanted most was my time.
Right.
And I don't know how I fucking lucked out, but they, after spending their entire lives in Florida, they now live an hour away from me in Tennessee.
Wow. That's amazing, Chef.
It is. And it's been a reinvigoration of relationships that I had worried that, had run its course. So speak to me about what it's like to build community, and what benefit that has, other than addressing, say, drug addiction directly.
I love this. I love this point, and thank you for that question. I need to let everybody know that when Chef Adam came up to Philadelphia, for this event that was at the Bynum Brothers restaurant, which is a big restaurant group here in Philadelphia, and what he did was he was our guest speaker, and we had, I don't know, maybe 60 plus individuals in the room that were in the restaurant industry, and Adam commanded the room just by grabbing that microphone and resonated with everyone. And you want to know why? It's because of your honesty. It's because of your directness and your candid nature to just speak truth. People's heads were like looking down, and when Adam was speaking, everyone's like, what is going on? Like, community, go ahead, community is all part of that.
There was some great food there.
Yeah, there was some great food there. Great food. Great experience. And I think that feeling, right? It's how we feel about what we do. Like, we are creatives, okay? We're not robots, although robots are infiltrating our restaurants. There is a whole energy behind the people that do this work. You got to be freaking crazy, okay? In some way, shape, or form, you have an intensity that says, I want to do this and give myself whatever representation that is to someone else through a form of service. And to me, there's only certain people that do that. And when you are in a room of 60 plus people that do the same freaking thing, there's an energy you cannot replicate. That's why community was so important to me, because people needed to feel, the energy of others who are doing the same thing. Because I could be in my, 4 walls, which here I am in Porco's small oven. These guys don't leave here. They go to work and they go home, So I knew that. And because even during the pandemic, we were serving food to individuals, I literally loaded up my car. Medical marijuana company, Alera Healthcare, actually gave us money when we weren't even a nonprofit, and said, we want to help you in your cause. I bought 100 meals from 8 locations in Philly, and the community piece, which I'm threading through, was I bought those meals, put it in my car, and actually Porco's was part of that too here. And then and giving people, right? I resonate with giving people like yourself. So when I did that, it was during the time when Philadelphia was going to shut down for COVID. And it was right before Thanksgiving. Shitty. Okay. I remember that time period as being just one of the goosebump rising experiences for me, because there was people smoking cigarettes on front steps, not having service people like come in. There was individuals that I dropped off lunch from Porco's to them, and they were like, I can't remember the last time somebody bought me lunch,
Right.
or people crying because it was right before Thanksgiving and like, what am I going to do to get money for the holidays? It was
Right.
shitty, right? And so the community part is important because while, especially when they were isolating at that time, everyone's like, I didn't know my neighbor's getting the same meal I am today. Oh, I didn't know the restaurant down the street was doing the same thing. Like, oh, thank you. Like, some people are like, you're doing God's work. I think it's a feeling, right, of us just being connected. I was like, this is staff meal, community staff meal, and people just felt like, okay, we're being brought together. And I think, like, think of just even with food, we gather. I think it's an essential element to the work we do.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think that you were ahead of the curve in this particular approach, because it came to me in my particular focus around shifting the old, hospitality culture.
Yeah.
It seemed to me, well, let me back up a little bit. There was a, I wish I remembered the guy's name, but he did this rat park exercise where he basically, in a clinical environment, had rats who were taking sips of their water bottle that had laced with, I think, opioids. And what happened is these rats all just kind of went into their own corners and continued to drink the water. And then when he put those same rats in a park-like environment in community with other rats, they most often made a choice to be with the other rats as opposed to drinking that water. Now, I'm not saying that's a cure-all for addiction, because I know in my own particular case, when I was, troubled and addicted to opioids, I didn't want to do anything except hide out. I didn't want to be around anybody else. And so when people would try to goad me into like, no, come out, I would most often push off because of my own shame and regret. But I also get that without that type of connection, things probably wouldn't have gotten that far. So it seems to me that while most operators, and I'm including myself, focus on the outside community as being the ones that are most important, to the ones that they need to connect to, whether they're making TikTok videos or talking to them. It's that's it. Shane, look at you, man. Fantastic. Shane said Dr. Bruce Alexander, the Rat Park study was done here in Vancouver at UBC. That should an operator decide to shift and give equal time and attention to the internal community within his or her operation, and this doesn't have to be the owner or this could be the chef or the front of the house manager, to connect everybody to a set of shared values, which is what any community is about, then that's probably the first step to shifting the culture, because as well as I, it's all happening elbow to elbow. It's not a poster on the wall or anything. So the question is how do you get everybody agreed to the same set of values, because everybody's going to have their own opinion, and yet focus on this idea that we're not a family, we're a team, but we're also a community. And from that standpoint, let that grow. And that's why I thought your particular focus on the community was so revolutionary. And I didn't get it until a couple years later, because I remember calling you and saying, okay, so how do you build a community? Like, can you give me the roadmap?
Exactly. And I think aligning your values, you're right on it. When you can align values, then we can share in the community. And so that doesn't happen until you lay that groundwork first, right? There's something people identify with. Somebody might see themselves or someone they know or resonate or relate. And I can't build community until people see that bigger picture. Sure. I think that works in any organization. You are your independent self with your own experiences and, what you've gone through in your life, and identity that makes you you. And when we have just a sliver of overlap where something, a string in me and a string in you, go, oh, that connects. You stop in that ACF room. We talk all throughout the years of us going on our own journeys. It's because we overlap on a value. We care about people, and we're not afraid to put ourselves out there to tell people about it.
I'm always so invigorated by your enthusiasm, and I know how hard you work, Maria. And I know that your challenge throughout this entire experience is about how to channel some of that back inside to your own self-care. But before I go there, I wanted you to talk specifically, okay, so why a cookbook? What's its purpose?
Yep.
How can we support you?
Yes. The cookbook is a vessel of transformation. I was like, started in January, I should say. I was afraid to ask our community because I didn't want to burden everyone with more shit. Like
Right.
everybody's already got their own stuff. So I put an ask out to the community saying, would people be interested in contributing a recipe to a community cookbook? 28 people said yes. I was like, all right,
Nice.
we're making a cookbook. There we go. I had a partner with Eric Lovett Jr. who 100% volunteered his time to film in 4K. Like, we had 4 locations. Like, doors just kept opening and opening because I said, I found the foundational tool. I can start an account to pay forward mini grants right away. So that, which by the way, Cooks Who Care was going to get denied for my nonprofit status, which led me on that journey.
Really?
1 week before my application was going to expire. Okay.
Amazing.
I was in a 3-month courting process with TCF, TCFhelps.org. They are our fiscal sponsor now. And they said, we're going to sign with you because first I said, I only have $2,000. What can I do with it? Second, they said, you're the only person making impact in the community right now. People have budgets and they have money and they have this whole thing and they go, you're doing the work. We already know there's a need. And so they signed me on. And then my husband and I went to their event where now we can write off donations and I don't have to tell everybody we don't exist anymore. So I feel I'm serving our purpose. I said, if I'm not supposed to do this, stop me. Right. So that's where I am with all of this right now. But because I had community champion behind me, we were able to connect the infrastructure for setting up these accounts and then have the cookbook be the way to connect the customer. How many times have we said the customers don't understand what we're going through? They don't identify with the service we had. And I thought that was one missing element that I've struggled with over the years is not connecting with industry. It's been connecting with the customer.
Yep.
So the vessel, the physical entity, it'll be a digital book and we're working hard to get a digital print book ready by December. But I would say that the customer, it's called Entertaining for Mental Health. So
Excellent.
We're keeping it light. All of these individuals that shared either a drink, a mocktail, an entertaining recipe. It was all because we wanted to bring the customer into our lives, into our world, meet us where we are.
Right.
And it's not just a recipe. They get to see a video of how to make it.
That's
so
crazy.
It's like, here's our craft. Here's what we do. And they all shared a personal story about their own experiences. So it's a unique book for sure, but I thought the greatest way to make impact, include the customer, include the community, and boom, help others.
Again, slightly ahead of the curve, Maria. Because about 6 months ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing, I think, about 65 chefs as I was rebooting the podcast, Chef Life Radio. And I can't tell you, I mean, I think it was like 95% of those that I spoke to, one of the most predominant things that was up for them to talk about in that particular moment was this feeling of being unappreciated by the guests.
Yeah.
Now, they also had the other part of it where they were feeling underappreciated, by their employers. But what really chapped their ass was the idea that the guests had no conception of what they were going through. And I think you know me well enough to know that I've always said, like, look, if you're expecting anybody to understand how much you put in, you're standing there for a while. But I get at that particular point, the emotionality of the release and the desire for connection was so strong that, they probably didn't think very much. And I know from all the accounts that we've seen and heard of in the papers and on news reports of like people acting very, very badly.
Yes.
And I thought, God damn it. That's brilliant, Maria. Get them bought in so they have some conception of what's going on. A little bit of the dust is settled now. Well done. So how can we support this effort? Because the proceeds are going to what?
The community fund. So
Fantastic.
and it's called community. It's a community fund. I didn't know that they existed. They exist, and I was able to recreate this infrastructure with the help of our fiscal sponsor. So there's a couple of different ways. Obviously, when the book comes out, people can buy it.
Right.
The other is that I have to get this book printed. All right.
Okay.
And I'm saying that the energy that I'm pushing between now and November 7th is super important because I will have the digital book. I've already fundraised for that. We've got it right away. Honestly, it's supported by industry members. I'm so amazed. Once we'll have that ready for December, right? But guess what? I could by November 7th, because I have to prepay for the book.
Right.
And if you think about it, all these companies have raised like millions of freaking dollars and they don't even have an idea in the world of what they're going to do with the money. I know what I'm going to do with the money. I'm going to buy the book and then we're going to grow the fund for holiday sales, because by the holidays, how many people are going to want to give a cookbook to somebody and put it in a present and put it under, in their homes?
And the double bonus is that, hey, it's a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and it's for a good cause. Now, wait a second. Are you asking for support around getting the book printed? Like, is there anybody in our network?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put it right out. I'm just going to put it out right here in the chat and in the show notes. If anybody has any leads or connections for printing cookbooks, which we all know is not an easy thing.
We have a printer. I just got to pay for it. So I'm raising 24 grand. I've already raised 3, actually more than that, because I talked to a few people today. I need to raise $19,000 more to get to my goal by November 7th. And there's a couple ways people could do it. Portion of proceeds events at their space, and then just donate a percentage of sales to Cooks Who Care to kick this off. Or they can actually get a direct link in the book, the digital how-to videos with a direct link to their business and or organization by sponsoring $500.
Okay.
And that's the way we're connecting the community. We're kicking it off.
Where can people go to get more information about this? I mean, I'm jotting down my notes as quick as I can. But you threw that $500. I'm like, oh my God, that would be fantastic, right? Yeah. And so you're looking for partnership to get the book produced. Yep. And there's various ways to do that. Where can they get more information?
I would say right now, go to our Instagram at Cooks Who Care. We're working on getting the update for the website. It's slower on that area, but Instagram is updated right away, so they can get more information about it right there.
And it's
Facebook.
And it's it's Instagram /Cooks Who Care.
Correct.
Wait a second, I'm gonna put that right.
You'll see our thermometer on there, our 3,000 that we just collected. From area businesses who are supporting, such as High Street Hospitality, the Bynum Brothers Group. We're so grateful for these energies. Tattooed Moms, a couple restaurants in our area, and including one in Ohio.
That's fantastic. So the word is already getting out. And the deadline is for when? November
7th. I know it's tight.
Well, we got to, oh my gosh. Now, if we can't get it done, no one can get it done. And on Facebook, I know that there's a Cooks Who Care community. There's also a Cooks Who Care Facebook group, right? Forward facing.
Yes, there is. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. I want to make sure that I put that in there, and I also put contact information for you, in case they want to get a hold of you directly. Because who knows, there may be somebody who wants to come out and just write a big old fat check. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Chef, this would be amazing, because once we do this structure, then we can replicate this everywhere. So that's really what I'm standing behind. I always laugh when I'm like, oh, this guy raised like, $2 million, and they don't even know what they're going to do with the money yet. So this is making impact right away. And especially as I wanted to kick this off sooner, because we know seasonal depression is starting to kick in.
Yep.
The, challenges during the holidays. It's not happiness for everybody during this time of year. And, we had a few people last year that committed suicide, unfortunately, during the holidays. And, I'm trying to see, we can make impact as early as December. And I'm trying to push for that to help more people.
Perfect. I commend you. I'm always, as I said, invigorated and ready to jump back in. Um, and it's, you know, it's just crazy because again, you seem to be ahead of the curve. And maybe you've had the same experience as I are, like feeling like you're like 7.5 minutes ahead of your time.
I always feel behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, well, that's because we're time travelers and we're never, ever, ever where we're supposed to be. So, Maria, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been really enlightening. I know we didn't talk about seasonal challenges, but do you have a word that or a thought for those operators out there who perhaps haven't prepared themselves enough from a P&L standpoint to deal with cold snaps? I mean, not everybody can hold off until, holiday hell week in order to get the revenue going. So
yes.
What can somebody do right now?
I love your suggestions of how you can be accommodating, like with the half days. I think that because burnout is real, as far as what the holidays and people will go through, we got to think about our own steam, the steam of others. Right. There's even good things that you could do even before you go to work. Like maybe everyone takes a walk, for half a mile before they get started. And maybe they take that coffee break before the shift starts, and we're doing something unique. Or I know Porco's does this often, where they'll collaborate with a neighboring organization to get lunch, so that way it's not just your own staff meal. And I know it gets busy. We gotta be weary of that word busy and how we use it, and to say, could I spend 30 minutes walking down the street with my team outside? Yes, you can. Okay. I think that 30 minutes, just like your one-on-ones, like maybe even doing something, is just as useful as being in a private room with them saying, how are you doing? How are things going?
I think it can be much more impactful. And the other point about that is, like, I was thinking that you'd give them some type of business advice in regards to like how they could manage their P&L for the rest of the quarter. Sure. But what you're actually talking about is there's always going to be stress during these holidays anyway, whether we've done it to themselves or the situation that we find ourselves. And for those of us who love this industry so much that we just keep coming back, we can't let ourselves get taken out. So by taking that time to self-nurture, by taking care of ourselves, maybe we're showing up differently emotionally at work and maybe not so stressed out, because as we both know, ain't no miracles happening when you're stressed.
No. And if your face look like this and you like walk in, you look miserable, and you're like this, you're not even making eye contact, or you're like smiling at people, literally just look up and like make facial expressions, because I've heard from staff members going, oh, I feel like my boss is like really upset, or maybe there's something I did, or they're really stressed. Like, people pick up on your energy and they're going to take that energy. So if you're not changing your attitude and everybody else, you're not going to be productive and you're not going to make your numbers.
Great stuff. I want to put a pin in it right there, because again, you and I could just be here forever, but we got money to raise, clearly.
That's it. Yeah. Yep.
Chef Maria, thank you so very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to come in short notice, because I know it wasn't easy to cover for our good friend Jim Taylor of Benchmark 60. But to those listeners, have an epic week, and we'll see you next week.
This is awesome. Thank you, Chef.
You bet.